And I apologize for those of you who heard this before. I'll keep it really quick. I just want to take you through, just so logistics, if you're not familiar with how to use the chat box, it's pretty easy. So that's just a picture of me. And as you see, I don't really have to worry if the hair salons are closed. It is one of the advantages. And I don't have bad hair days. So anyway, so what you're going to see on your screen are these icons. What you want to do is select the one that looks like a cartoon bubble. It's right next to the phone. And you're going to get a box like this. And you type on the bottom where it says type here. And then everybody can see it. And I, as you know from the other sessions if you attended, I really do look at it a lot. I've been doing this for a while. I actually almost hear what you type. So I will definitely respond to any questions. So if you haven't done it already, would you put your name in and where you're from? And then I'll know that that works. And now I know where it is. Or I'm going to look it up. I didn't get a chance to do it yet. Actually, I was in Pulaski a couple of weeks ago. Don't ask me why I was in Pulaski, but I was in Pulaski. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I kind of have a little checklist of stuff that I want to go over with you. I would still say this is kind of a tips and tricky kind of thing, you know, as opposed to every single feature, and kind of show you some things you may or may not know. What I am going to do, which I've done, you know, before, is I'm going to kind of ask for your feedback as to whether you are familiar with it. And again, that's just helpful for me as I plan future tips and tricks sessions. Okay? So let's start with just some really basics, which is I went over yesterday, because I would assume we have people at different levels with this, including folks that are maybe just getting started with Google Docs. So what's going to happen is up top, when you open up the application, you're going to see there's a whole bunch of templates. If you want to just start with a blank, you're going to hit the big plus, and that's going to put you into a blank document, okay? And as I had said with the Google Forms, I'll say it here, first good habit, always name your document first. Otherwise, you're going to find a ton of untitled documents, which you would find in mine, primarily because I don't really use this all the time. I really use Word more. So a lot of times it's stuff that I'm just kind of throwing together for training, but it's going to cause you headaches that you have to get rid of them. So just get into the good habit of always naming your document first, okay? Now, once you do that, you're going to notice that you get these two additional icons. One is an icon that stars, and it's only really useful if you don't star everything or you unstar stuff. But if you're working on things and you really want to be able to find them, you can star them. Just get into the habit when you no longer need them, unstar them. And then you're going to see a way to actually put the item in the appropriate folder in Google Drive right away, so you don't have all this stuff in the root directory. So again, this is just a tip and a recommendation. It's the same one I give to people who use Word. A lot of times we're under the gun, we're under pressure, we're not really sure where things should go. So it's not a bad idea to put in your Google Drive what I'll call a miscellaneous or an inbox folder. So let's say you're working on something, you're not sure, you're in a rush, you throw it in the inbox. And then what you can do is when you have time, go into your inbox and say, okay, that belongs here, this belongs there. But it's a good habit not to just have files sitting in the root directory. So I'm going to just put it in inbox. It doesn't really matter for what we're doing today. But I just wanted to point out that that's just something to consider. And again, it's more a style approach. Second thing I want to show you is when you open this up, you're going to get a view. It may not be the most appealing view. So I would definitely recommend going into, actually it's into the ruler and doing fit. So you're getting like width of the page for your creating your document. And again, that's under Zoom. You can zoom to 50%, 25%. But I generally prefer, most people in Word prefer it this way. It's like page width when you're typing, okay? All right, so here's a question for you. Have you ever had a situation when you're about to begin a document and then you get pulled away? Maybe you're pulled away, you have to make this phone call, you have to take care of something. Okay, so if it happens in Word, it's no big deal. Unless you're really using the online approach. As a general rule, it doesn't create the document until you save it. But in Google Docs, the moment you start typing, actually the moment you put the name in, it's going to create a document. So if I now pull away and shut this off, I'm going to have a training document sitting there. So a lot of people find that they're sitting on like a ton of what I'll call, like uncreated, 2-line, a half a line documents that they then have to clean up out of your drive. So just again, another little trick or a strategy, if you do not need to get, and I know it's more proactive, because the other way you needed to, it didn't really get saved to your save. Here you have to take a proactive step, but it's a good step. If you find that you're in the middle of something, you need to just get called away, go to File, put it and move it to Trash, and that'll delete the document. So you're not going to be sitting on, and you're even going to see it here, a ton of these untitled documents, which I already had one from prepping today. But I'm just saying you could end up with like 20 of those if you don't do that. So again, I'll just repeat it. If you open up a document, and by the way, if I open it and I didn't type anything, it won't matter. But the moment I even do the little bit of typing, now it would save the document, even if I haven't titled it. So just get into the habit. If you don't have time to do it, just delete it. Move it to Trash. Okay? So how many of you were familiar with that? I don't know whether you were or not. All right. So and by the way, you're going to hear me do a lot of what I'll say comparisons between Word and Google Docs, because Word tends to be the standard, and a lot of people are, even people who are really using Google Docs for the most part, they generally migrated because their districts moved from Microsoft to Google. So it's good as a baseline comparison. So one of the issues that comes up, or one of the things that you can do in Word that you can't do in Google, is you don't have the same situation where you have a window. So for example, in in Windows, you could have 2, 3 documents open at the same time. How many of you who worked in Word, you would have multiple documents open at the same time? Okay, so you can't, and in fact, you can actually view them. It's possible to tile them, so you can have one top and bottom in Word. You can't, but there are some things that you can do. Can you hold on for 1 second? Well, hear me again? Sorry for that. I want to make sure you can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, good. All right, so going back to my thing, I apologize for that. So you can't have multiple documents open in Windows, but what you can do is have multiple tabs and open multiple versions of the same or different documents. So let me show you how that would work. So here, and it could actually be the same document, okay? So let's say I had this newsletter open, and I wanted to transfer something from it to another document, even this blank document. So what I do is I open them both up on a separate tab, and then all I have to do is do copy, and then switch to the other tab, and then I can paste. Now I can even do it with the same document. Which you can also do in Word, okay? Actually, it isn't the same. I pulled up the wrong one, all right? Well, now since I will pull up the same document. So now I have the same document. And it's probably going to be a little sluggish here between join me and everything, but you should be able to see it. So I have the same document open in both tabs. So it's possible in some cases if, like, I'm copying titles or things, and and there's an advantage here of having the same document. Understand, you make a change in one, it's going to automatically be reflected in the other. Well, within a second, anyway. So they are still the same document, but you could, if you wanted to view different parts of them, you could. Okay? So you can kind of get around the whole, I can only have one thing open by have multiple items. How many of you are familiar with that or have done that? A little both. Okay. All right. So this is a really cool feature. And I probably can do it through Doc. I may have to go into Drive to do it, but let's take a look. I can find it here. Okay. All right. So I want before I even do it, I want to talk to you about it. Okay. All right. So you're all familiar with PDFs, I assume. And you know that sometimes we have a document that's a PDF, we may have a document that's a Word document or another document. And it is possible to use some applications to convert a PDF into Word or into a more editable form without having to use a fancy program like Adobe Acrobat, So what is a little known secret is that Google Docs will automatically OCR your documents. Now, how good a job it does depends on what the document is and how they're created. There are PDFs and there are PDFs. So, for example, there are PDFs that may be created from, say, a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, if they're created from the document, a lot of times you can actually even copy and paste out the information. But what if they were not? What if it was a scanned image? Like you scanned a contract or you scanned a document. Then it's a little trickier. Then it has to actually do optical character reading to be able to pull the document. Well, because Google's so cool, and and with all of this, online type stuff, they've actually built it into Google Docs. So all you actually have to do is open a PDF, and it'll convert it. So I'm actually going to show you the PDF first, just on my computer. And I picked this one on purpose because it's an especially unusual document, okay? If I can find it. There it is. And I'll tell you what it is. It's my dad was the last to go. He passed away close to a decade ago, okay? So the document I'm going to show you is their trust document. I'm actually going to open it up. Okay, so there is the document. So I can tell you that this was in there, in the safety deposit box. This document was not produced on a computer. This was typed on a typewriter, okay? And the copy I have is a scan, okay? Copy that I've kept. I actually have the original somewhere, but this is a scanned copy, okay? And so I want to show you that you can even OCR a document like this, okay, which wasn't even done on a computer, okay? So I loaded it up in advance so I wouldn't have to go through all the details of doing that now. But I did want you to get the idea that I'm talking about a fairly primitive document, okay? So here it is. And it could take a second to load. Okay, so it now optical character read a typewritten thing. And if you want to know what's really fascinating, if you remember the original document, I'll actually just show you. I think it's still loaded. Okay, maybe not. But in the original document, this 3 was handwritten. Okay. This 3 was handwritten. And yet Google was able to read it. So this is a really nice feature because Word will not do this. Now, there are some third-party applications that cost money, but this is a free and built-in thing. So again, if it's a relatively simple document, even something you produce, like a letter, you're going to get a really good result. Here we might have some formatting issues, but I can tell you it's a lot easier to reformat some of this than to retype it, okay? So it's a nice plus. All you have to do is put the document into your drive, and it's going to ask it's going to pull it up as the original PDF, and then what I would do is it asks what to open it into. If you say open it into Google Docs, it will automatically convert it, okay? And not everybody knows about that, so I thought that might be something worth sharing with you. Pretty cool, right? Okay. All right. The next thing on my list. This isn't as great as I wish it would be. It's still useful, but it isn't quite as hefty as the Word version. which I think is a little bit better. This is a feature that's available in Word as well. And it's under Tools, okay? And it's Preferences. And what it is it's really actually the built-in spell check, okay? And it does a lot of cool things. There are a lot of them built in already. So, for example, and I'll just take this out, if I type, it's going to convert it to the symbol. And the same thing, if I type, I should have picked just a blank document to show you this. Actually, I'm putting on another tab. Stick to my own rules here. So if I, do this, it's going to convert it to the, I'll make it bigger so you can see it. It'll convert it to the symbol. And the same thing if I do, it'll convert that. And I just wanted you to know where they are. And the fact that you can also create your own. Okay? So I would only recommend this. Don't use two digits. I would actually recommend either 3 or 4. Okay? So here's an example. Okay? I could do, I think Rosalind's a central school. Joe will correct me if it's not. But I could do Rosalind Central School District. Oh, it's a union free. Okay. You're gonna do. Okay. So now here I can do and so what's going to happen now is if I do it's going to replace it. Now, why I said I don't love it is I don't love it because that's all capped. And it's tricky the way it works. So if I do it lowercase, it's going to give it to me all lowercase. I can get it to do the first letter, but I can't get it to cap all the other words. So really, when you go beyond one word, it isn't all that great, okay? So, for example, if I do, and you'll play with it if you want to do, okay? So if you want to do, but it doesn't cap union, it doesn't cap free, and if I make them all cap, I get this. So I don't love it. I could certainly see it being useful for some things. If you're constantly typing, one word is not bad. So, if you want to abbreviate, superintendent, that's okay. But just watch out, it's not something you commonly see in the language. So it can be helpful, but a lot of times I end up taking some of them out. You can certainly, if there are common things like we saw with, like symbols, math symbols, certainly you can do them. You can certainly do something like, I don't know, or something like that. But because of the fact that it's not sophisticated enough to say cap all the titles, I'd say it's best to limit it to one word. But it's useful to know it's there. And you do have the ability to control them. I could take it out, if I don't need this anymore, I can eliminate it, etc. Okay? So that's under, I'll just tell you where it is. It's under Tools and Preferences. Also, if you have one here that is just causing you trouble, because you don't like what it's doing with it, you also know you can get rid of it. Okay? All you have to do actually is to shut it off. Okay? So in the case, I think I took it out, but let's see if it's still here. No, I took it out. Rosalind's out. Okay, but I'm just saying, you can shut it off if it's a problem. Okay? All right. Under the same place, tools, is voice typing. And it's pretty good. Okay? The rain, let's see if I have my mic on here. The rain in Spain stays mainly on the plain. The rain in Spain stays mainly on the plain. So if you've always wanted to have a dictation, you can do dictation. Okay? It's also under preferences. You have to go under I don't have Word open, but it's under like file preferences. Depends on whether you're on a PC or a Mac, but you can definitely do it, okay? And it's better, actually, because it's case sensitive. So if you type in the name of the district with it all capitalized, it'll pull it up as you wrote it. You won't have the same problem. I'm hoping eventually they'll fix that. One thing I have to say about Google Docs, because I do tend to be critical and compare, that I'm not sure what you're asking. Where the typing was or where the preferences? Oh, the voice typing is under tools. Voice typing. The rain in Spain falls mainly, can even sing, on the plane. Okay. And then you can fix it up. Okay. But yeah, it does work. All right. All right. Okay. So what I was saying before was, it's a lot of times there'll be something and I won't like it in Google Docs, or, it doesn't work quite as well. And I'll come back, like a month later and they'll have added it. So I'm just going to share two of them with you that were, fairly recent additions. And the funny thing is, you may not even known it was there in the first place in Word, okay? So let me ask a question of you. Have you ever had a situation, I know I hate this, where you're typing a letter and you just can't get it all on one page? It's like it's one line over, and it just won't fit on the page. Don't you hate that? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I want to give you a couple of tips on how you can address that, okay? And unfortunately, I'm not sure I can give you the best visual experience to appreciate that here. I'll try to show you, okay? All right. And by the way, this is just gibberish text in, Latin text for this purpose, just as a fill, okay? And I'll just share with you what you could do in Word that you couldn't do until recently here, okay? So I don't know. Well, first thing, I assume that you all know that even though you're given 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 14, you can do 13. You didn't. I assume you knew that. Okay, that you weren't limited to what it shows you. What you may not have known, okay, it now does it, only within the last month, because if I had done the training a month ago, I would have to tell you they didn't do it, and then I said that in the training. I said, it can't do it, and I showed people it couldn't do it, and it could do it, okay? So here's what you can do in Word, and now can do in this. Did you know that you can do a half a font? 12.5. Okay? So what am I saying? Let's say you have a letter and the letter is at 12. Okay? and all of a sudden it's not fitting on the page. So you go to 11.5. Okay, the probability of people noticing the difference between 11.5 and 12, very small. Recently, Google Docs added that. It's been in Word forever. Now, you only limit it to a half a font, so you can't do, well, I shouldn't speak. For all I know, they changed it. You can't do like 12.3. It has to be like 12, 12.5, 13. But, a half a font can get you out of a bind sometimes if you're having a tough time getting a document to fit. Okay? I will tell you, if I really want to squeeze stuff on a page, the way I usually approach it's a little from here, a little from there. So I slightly adjust the margins, I slightly adjust the font size, I slightly adjust the line spacing, which is the next thing I'm going to show you. And then I slightly adjust the paragraph spacing. And then all of a sudden I'm able to fit a whole paragraph in. Okay? So obviously there's a limit in this. If you play around with it too much, you're going to get a document that's very unappealing and hard to read, which I think in the case of fine print is sometimes what they want. But, at least you're aware you're able to do it. Okay? All right, so you can do half fonts. Let me show you something else. And it has to do with line spacing. So once again, I'm going to tell you that I was checking this today, and I was going to tell you couldn't do it. So they must have just added it maybe in the last week, okay? Because I only did training about a week ago, and it didn't do it, okay? So let's talk about line spacing. So, and that's the space between each line, not the space between the paragraphs, the space between each line on a return. Now, it affects a paragraph because a paragraph is a line, but it's separate from paragraph spacing. It's line spacing. Okay? So, if you notice here, it says single, 1.15, 1.5, double. Well, you can do fractional customized spacing. So if you go to custom spacing, and we're going to start larger than 1, I can put in any fraction, even very, very fine-tuned fractions, 1.234, right? And it will apply that to my text. So just as for good aesthetics, it's good, if I can put stuff on a page, if it's not fitting, it's also nice to be able to fill the page, okay? And I will tell you, this is one of those things that's hard for me to show you. And for some of you who are at home who don't have a printer at home, you may have to wait until you get back to the office. But I'm going to ask you to do an experiment. I'm going to ask you to take a letter or a document and print it in single space, print it at 1.1, print it at 1.2, print it at 1.3, and lay them all three down on the table and tell me which one you'd prefer to read. And I'm pretty much sure that you are going to prefer to read the 1.3 or the 1.2 over the 1. It's going to be more appealing. White space improves desire to read is improved, okay? So you can use it to, if there's something you want people to really, it's a document, you're doing a newsletter or whatever, I usually like to add extra space. It makes for an easier and more comfortable reading, okay? What I would have told you, before recently is that you couldn't go below 1. Now, you could always do it in Word, okay? So, for example, you can do 95%. So what are we really talking about? We're talking about whatever the space is between each line, we're cutting it by 5%, okay? So it's slightly squishy, but not so squishy that it isn't readable. So think about it here, what I've already said with just these two things. If you were at 12 and you made this 11.5 and you now made your line spacing that was originally supposed to be At 1, you made it 0.95, you're able to often get 2 or 3 more lines on the page. Then you mess with the margins, you can even get more. Okay? So there is a point at which it's just not a good idea to do. Okay? And again, it's hard to appreciate this on the screen when you print them. It really jumps out at you. But let's say I did 0.80. That, I guess it's readable. It's really not going to look really good. Do you know what I mean? So you can probably get away with 0.90. You know, somewhere between 0.90 and 1. I really wouldn't recommend, unless you're trying to get people not to read the fine print, I wouldn't recommend going beyond that. But even that can, you know, if you think about it, that can save you, that can save you some space if you're trying to put in stuff, okay? So how many of you are familiar with customized spacing? Did you know about it at all? And I doubt you knew about it going, if you were with docs, that you knew about it going below 1, because it didn't until about a week ago. So that's a good example of you know, Google trying to, because it didn't exist. That's why you didn't know about it. Okay, although there are some people that don't know you can do it in Word either. It's just a good example of Microsoft, you know, of Google constantly looking at complaints it gets, because it's always being compared to users who use Word and then giving them feedback and then them trying to figure out how to build it in. So they're constantly converging and getting things closer. And to me, those two, the half fonts and this spacing, it can get you out of a bind sometimes, particularly if you're trying to produce a newsletter or you have to print something like a flyer and you really don't want to go to a second page. Okay? Questions? Everybody good? Anything you need me to see again? Okay. Okay. So, because Google is Google and web-based, there are some really kind of nice pluses, okay, that kind of come with it being web-based. And one of them comes with wanting to include an image in your documents. So, of course, you can upload an image that you have, but you can also, right in the document, search the web. Now, you can't do that in Word. In Word, what you'd have to do is open up a browser, find your document, copy and paste it in. Here, you can do it right through Google, because there's Google Images. So, for example, I don't know. I just did school kids, okay? And now I see an image I like. I can put it right into my document. I don't have to bother and cut and paste. I can do it right through. Now, there is only one negative to this, depending on whether you care. Okay. So if you go through doing, looking for an image on, just through Google, through the browser, you have the option in the settings to set it as to whether or not it's a copy-protected image. And there are certain images that are considered copyrighted, or they're not sure, and there are others that are free for use. This just will pull anything that's on the web. Whereas if you do that way, you have the ability to be a little more granular. I'm the first one to admit I'm not really good about that. I cheat. But, you know, as a school district, I think you have to be more concerned about using images. By the way, a lot of times when I do training for a district, I will actually pick images from the district's own website, because I figure they already have them up. They're not going to complain if I'm doing training in their own district with their images. But, I just want you to be mindful of that, just from the copyright issue. But from an ease of use issue, it's really great to be able to pull up a picture, okay? All right. So let's look at styles for a minute. Okay, how did I do that? Okay. So you actually have a couple of places you can do it. You can do it from insert, or you can do it right from here, actually. And you just do search the web, and then you search for what you want, okay? Schools, or high schools. Well, I have high school buildings. And then you select the image you want, and you hit insert. So it takes a second. It's going to put the image in your document. Okay? Now, by the way, once you're in there, then you have a lot of options about, in editing the document. So you can rotate it, you can color it, all without having to use any kind of a third-party thing. And Word is fairly robust in this area in terms of what you can do in editing, but this is a little better. You can crop and size and all that good stuff. Like I said, it's not something you couldn't do in Word, but it's a little bit easier to do it here. Okay? All right. So let's talk about styles for a minute and how styles work. So there's no question there are styles, but they're certainly not anywhere as robust as Word. Okay? So I want to show you basically how the styles work and, where you would get them from and kind of what you can do, what your limits are a little bit here. Okay, so first we got to get this hideous line spacing fixed. I would prefer Word, okay? Look, I'm going to see if I can put this in perspective, so I don't end up in the word Google wars, okay? And this goes for all of the Google documents. Sheets, slides, docs. Word can do more, okay? There are a few things that Google is really good at. I would certainly say Google Forms are ahead of Microsoft Forms, which are a mess. But as a general rule for spreadsheets or for documents, Word is the king. They spent $1 billion to develop Word. It's really an extensive product. That said, it's also extremely complicated. They've tried to simplify it by putting a lot of the common things in the home ribbon, but sometimes people find the ribbons overwhelming. They can't figure out where to find stuff. Google Docs is much simpler. I think it actually has an easier learning curve for a beginner. So, and 90% of the users don't do fancy documents. So for the average person, the average teacher, the average student, the average person, Word has a lot of pluses Doc has a lot of pluses besides the price. Its ease of use, its ease of learning, its simplicity. So I don't want to knock it for what it is. As I look at it, it reminds me of an older version of Word. And a lot of people are not happy over the fact that they've gotten so sophisticated. They think it was better in an earlier time. I'll leave that to all of your opinions on that. But I just want to point out that that's kind of a pros and cons. It is a little quicker to learn this. And there's some benefits in that. I know that may have been a longer-winded answer than you wanted, but I just think it's important to keep that in mind. I am going to share with you some things I think it really shines in over Word, and that really is more in the area of collaboration. But when it comes to doing a newsletter or a sophisticated flyer, you probably have more tools to work with in Word than you do in Docs. But they're constantly improving. They're making changes. I'll share some more with you that they have changed that are better over the last year. Okay? All right. So I want to talk about styles. Okay? So as you know, some of you know, because a lot of things in Word people don't use, Word has all of these style sheets that are available. And there's a whole bunch of them with a whole bunch of stuff, okay? So you don't have the same level of options in Google Docs. In Google Docs, you basically get two style sheets. You get theirs, and you can do one customized one of your own. So the way you customize is, and I'm going to pick something no one would ever do just to show you what it would look like, okay? So you know it's there. So what I did here was I took the title, and I don't even know what font I picked, caveat, okay? So what I can do is I don't even think I have to highlight it, okay? Yeah, I think I do, okay. So I can highlight this. I can now go to header, and I can say update header to match. So now under my header, it's going to be that style. So if you are a really creative person, or you like to do newsletters and stuff, and you really like to be very stylish, you could certainly create your own style sheet, okay? And you could make that your default. So you can save whatever you created here as my default style. That means if you open up another document, I'm talking about from scratch, not a document you already had opened and created, just a brand new one, it's going to have that caveat in there. So if you've got a particular look or style you like to use in your district, you could certainly do that, okay? Or if you only like to use it sometimes, once you're in the document, you can say, reset styles and blank it out. So you don't have the option of like having a lot of different styles that you can pick. There is a way that you can trick it though, okay? And I'm here to give you tips and tricks. So there is a way to trick it. So let's say that you have a particular style that you use for your newsletters. And by the way, these particular styles, I didn't go as fancy as I could have. I could have also included a color in the style as well. So now my header is going to actually be in red, so I can do some, pretty cool stuff. So let's say I don't do newsletters every day, but I got a really particular style. Yes, you can add a border, okay? I have a really particular style I like to do when I do my newsletters, okay? And how am I not going to lose it? Well, I will tell you that if you create a document and you you create it in those styles, that style will remain within the document even if you change your default. So remember I said before, if you open a new document, it'll go to the default, whatever is either yours or the default. But if you open a document that's already got this in red, and it's already got blue, and it's already got green, and you open it up, it will not erase it. It'll stick with it. So one way you can kind of trick it is you could create like your own little newsletter template. And then whenever you want to create a new newsletter, just make a copy of it and rename it. And then you would have whatever styles you do. So theoretically, you could have 10 different styles, but you can't have them being pulled from here. You'd have to really create a document with that style. So it's a solvable problem, but I wanted to make you aware, of the issue. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left. Let me give you a couple of tips, because actually I have a conference call at 3:30 that I have to take. But okay, so Okay, so, and this is probably where we'll wrap up. It's just an important thing I wanted to share with you, okay? And if you attended yesterday, you understand because it's somewhat of a review of what I did yesterday, okay? But in a different application. Okay, so we had a meeting, and here's my to-do list. This is what everybody's supposed to do, okay? So first, you need to know how you share a document. So the way I share a document is I go to share, and I put in the name of the people. Now, I'm only going to put in myself, because otherwise I'll be getting an odd call from someone saying, what's the story? Okay? And so now I have shared. You got to share it with at least one person. Maybe I shared it as a draft, and now I want to let people know the final one has been updated, and I'm repeating what I did yesterday. I can email collaborators and tell them this is the final version. And then send it, and then they're going to get an email with a link to the updated document. I can also assign, okay, and we talked about that yesterday in Google Sheets. Because there's no cells, in order to be able to assign, you have to highlight the text. And then you go to comments, and then I can add a comment. Now, if you remember yesterday, I said you can assign by hitting a plus sign. And then you can type. And then assign it to the person, and theoretically, they would have to respond. By the way, if you had their names in this, you might simply assign it and say, what's the story? Has it been done? You know, can I get an update on that? Okay? So I'm just going to show you another one I didn't show you yesterday that's a different way to assign. It's pretty much the same thing. So last time, if you remember, we assigned with a plus. So pluses are good if you want to sign up front. Okay? So like I'm doing here, and then you continue typing. You can also do it another way. Okay? Can you check on this? So I'm typing first, and then use the @ sign instead of the plus sign. It works the same way. And then I can assign it to them. So you can either assign with a plus or an @ It really doesn't matter. It's just a question of the way you want to type, okay? Because you do the plus, you got to do it at the beginning. The @ you can do it even in the middle of the whole descriptor, okay? Now what's going to happen is for each, sometimes I will tell you it takes a little bit of time before these are sent. It's not unusual for it to take a day, or not a day, an hour. But they'll get it, and they'll get an email. It'll actually take them right to this space. So it's very good if you're a supervisor. I got a director of facilities. He has a meeting, and then what he does is he goes into his document, and he basically assigns everything and said, was it done? Yes, you can. So, for example, if this was a committee, I'll use the @ symbol. Joe Gregone, apologize, you're going to get a nonsense message from me, Joe, but you know what it's about. And now it's been assigned to me and Joe, okay? So yes, you could assign it to a committee. If it's the whole group, you're better off doing email collaborators and doing it that way. But if you were assigned, let's say you had 20 people and you're assigning it to a small committee, like only the first grade teachers, then yes. Then you could do it that way. So, yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, thank you. It may not come for a while, Joe, all right? But you get the idea, okay? And that's how it works. All right, so I've got to run because I've got a conference call, all right? Thank you all. I hope you found this helpful, and we'll talk to you soon.